Declining employment opportunities is a global challenge today. According to ILO, total global number of unemployed youths is estimated to reach 73 million. Governments often fail to come up to the aspirations of the people, especially of the youth, by providing new employment opportunities. Formal employment is becoming increasingly scarce. Naturally, the opportunities available lies essentially in entrepreneurship. How to create enterprise and entrepreneurship with the minimum possible investment? This is a big question for all governments. The debate on entrepreneurship development revolves around technology startups and other self-employment activities. The focus essentially is on creating such opportunities on a large scale within the shortest possible time. Employment is generated through manufacturing and services. Manufacture is considered to be the engine of economic growth. It is estimated that 1 unit of employment in manufacturing leads to approximately 3 units of employment in the services sector of the economy. Manufacturing, globally as also in India, shows a declining trend. The major changes in technology recently are significantly labor displacing. This was exacerbated by the impact of COVID-19. The transitory thrust on the local market backfired, and now the digital market is growing faster. The emergence of global hubs of business lead to a new phenomenon of hubonomics. India's economic activities and livelihoods are highly distributed in the villages and towns. How to create income and employment in a distributed manner? The NITI Aayog, on lines of the SDG goals, focus on strengthening district as the fulcrum of development. But the districts are not standalone geographical entities. They are increasingly influenced by the value chains. Given its vision and mandate of sustainable development through enterprise, the ISED Small Enterprise Observatory finds itself duty-bound to understand the real story of enterprise and entrepreneurship in the states and districts of the country. Against this backdrop, the Institute releases its India Enterprise and Entrepreneurship Report 2022. The report is a unique scholarly work. The enterprise development reports of the ISED have been deliberated by various state legislative assemblies. The Enterprise and Entrepreneurship Report 2022 is the first of its kind report at the national level analyzing the state-level scene of the subject. It comes out through the joint initiatives of the ISED Center for Monitoring Enterprise Development in the States and the ISED Small Enterprise Observatory. The report is the unique outcome of an extended national partnership network of all major promotional agencies and financial institutions that makes this project of ISED happen. ISED Director PM Matthew is the architect of such a wonderful solidarity platform of stakeholders. The Institute also celebrates the Silver Jubilee of its prestigious project, India MSME Report Series this year. This world-class report, released on November 9 on the National Entrepreneurship Day, has been widely debated for its unique content and direction. Naturally, it has been able to come out with some unique observations and policy recommendations. Focal areas of the study are enterprise scene at the state level, new initiatives at the state level, challenges and opportunities of program implementation, branding of states and initiatives by the state governments. The report 2022 was prepared in consultation with the relevant departments of all state governments and of the Government of India with its institutional motto of sustainable development through enterprise. The ISED plays a path-breaking leadership role of providing a sense of direction to the governments and the business community against the backdrop of the disruptive economic environment of today. On the National Entrepreneurship Day, on November 9, the Institute brought together representatives of key stakeholders in enterprise and entrepreneurship. The theme of this year's deliberations is Sustainable Development Through Enterprise. The meet, as also the findings of the report, carries this vital theme in the context of India. ISED Director Dr. PM Matthew draws the contours of the Enterprise and Entrepreneurship Report series, as also the agenda of the National Entrepreneurship Day.
For the past 25 years, and this is the Silver Jubilee year of the twin child, and that is the report series, which is looking into state of small, and medium enterprises in the country. But as all of us know, small, medium enterprises, they have been typically described as the base of the pyramid. Naturally, I mean, in terms of numbers, they are the largest group among enterprises. in the country, naturally in any part of any other country also. And focusing on these enterprises at the national level, as all of us know, is an extremely difficult task, because you will have to arrive at conclusions on the basis of such a very diverse and dispersed sector of the economy over a short period of 1 year, which is the reporting period. And now, having completed 25 years of our exercise in the subject area, we thought that there need to be a more focused attention on the kind of developments that are happening at the state level. Not only state level, I would say at the sub-national level, because whenever we are talking about India's sector, means one will be making conclusions on the basis of the very broad national level experiences. But here the attempt is on looking at particular states, and looking at the states is a country in itself. The kind of enquiries that has to happen, it should be below the level of the state, which again means sub-state level, the district level, as well as considering India's pattern of decentralization at the local self-government level. But all this cannot happen in the short run. In the long run, there is a potential, and this potential we are looking at in terms of bringing out a report focusing on the states of India, all the states and union territories, and having a broad view of the kind of developments in these states and union territories over the last 1 year or probably in recent times. So the report, in fact, has two things. Now, one is the academic part of, the other one is the technical part of. And the technical part of it is significantly crucial, I would say, because of two things. One is that enterprise and entrepreneurship, they are essentially a multi-stakeholder constituency. So being a multi-stakeholder constituency would mean that all the stakeholders, relevant stakeholders, should show active interest in making inquiries into the kind of developments that are happening in this constituency. As all of us know, it may not happen so easily, but in our context, over the last 25 years, we have an immensely encouraging experience of our partner institutions, members of the National Partnership Network, including several stakeholder institutions, including banks, including commercial agencies, state governments, other organizations, non-governmental organizations. All these organizations and individuals have immensely supported us, and because of that, now we could make a platform which is facilitating the kind of work that is happening at the level of the observatory. As also, we have a particular program in itself, and a center, particularly a center, looks into the kind of developments at the state level, ISED Center for Monitoring Enterprise Development in the states. And both national level institutions as well as state level institutions have provided immense support. And it is because of this support that not in terms of comparing one state with another, or saying that one state is better and the other state is not that good. The whole question, having a competitive environment of investment and enterprise development, that is the ongoing paradigm, wherein there is significant scope for all states to come up with their own particular advantages. Some states may be having some disadvantages also. So when comparing states on the basis of their performance, doesn't mean that some state is better than the other one. Here again, as all of us know, that investment promotion is a focal area of all state governments, and the state governments are organizing investor meets in almost all states. This has been happening on an annual basis, and wherein the question is, there are two questions. One is that on the basis of this kind of
About 85% of India's workforce obtains its livelihood and makes its important contribution, reciprocal contribution to the rest of society and economy. Its important role has now, for some time, come to be accepted universally. For example, even some of the most important economists in the country, globally, like Professor Solo, explain and show how the labor market is a social institution. Being a social institution, things are needed where things can happen, where they can combine traditional knowledge and information and understanding with the new frontiers which they see around and respond to them positively by producing. Now, naturally, livelihood sector provides the means of livelihood to about 85% of Indian public spending has gone, where most of the private, individual, and entrepreneurial and corporate efforts have gone. They're providing what I might call growth-centric infrastructure. What we need now is one whereby family capabilities, workers' capabilities, local resources, local demand pattern, etc., responded in a way that we are very fair, very sensitive, protective of our environment. The processes of replenishment of what we take from the environment, what we make use of, they also simultaneously replenish so that the total availability of natural resources and its balance, ecological balance continues. I think entrepreneurship lies not only in being able to produce and sell and realize the value, but at the same time fulfilling the social, economical, and I would say it's not only social, it's the global, the entire world's ecology, entire world's labor market in the name of the processes of what used to be called globalization. We are all interconnected now. This interconnection is not only through the market, it's mostly through the nature. It is through our needs, through our capabilities, its creative assertion. Now, this creative assertion, simultaneously, what it leads to a little bit of destruction, a little bit of depletion. The depletion has to be replaced. Entrepreneurial capabilities, entrepreneurial sensitivity, and the appropriate adjustment of technology, and naturally, most important of all, energy use has to be so fine-tuned that the requirements of society, requirements of the up to the last minute, everybody is made to participate and share.
Badrinarayanan Gopalakrishnan, head, International Trade, at the NITI Aayog, focuses his attention on building up a logic and rationale of entrepreneurship development in the states. Thinking global and creating innate competitiveness is his message. Highlights from his presentation.
Absolutely, we have to work a lot in the country, among the states, to promote entrepreneurship because India, like many other large economies, depends a lot on small and medium enterprises. So the individual enterprises, entrepreneurs, they mean a lot for the development of the country. It is going to be primarily the micro and small enterprises that form the major proportion of the number of enterprises that contribute to the. So it is very important to promote entrepreneurship and work on small enterprises across the country. Many initiatives have been taken by the central government and several state governments to promote this culture of entrepreneurship, address the needs of small entrepreneurs. The micro enterprises, it will be great if all the entrepreneurs, they start with that kind of an ambition or inspiration, so that they don't get stuck with one level of success, but they keep progressing to the next stage. So in order to do that, we need several facilitation components like financing, credit availability, quality, compliance standards, and technological support, innovation, intellectual property, and so on. A lot of things have to be facilitated at a small enterprise level. I always request all the startups and the enterprises that I know of to think global. Even if you may be catering to the Indian market, the domestic market, the local, state level or district level markets, but start thinking global, because if you only if you think global, you can actually not only get better value for money, in the sense you get greater prices, greater value added, and so on, but also in this interconnected global world, despite the recent tensions that are happening in terms of protectionism and deglobalization and so on, despite all this, we are intricately interconnected. So unless we take the initiative and think global and compete with other countries, in other markets, it is quite likely that at some point of time, the markets, the sectors, the commodities, the goods, the services where we have a very clear advantage today and where we are doing very well in the domestic market, it is quite likely that we may be displaced by the import competition. Why? Because unless we go global and we aspire to beat our competitors, it is possible that they may come to our market and encroach into our territory. The government can only go so far in terms of increasing tariffs and non-tariff measures and so on. But these things are not sustainable. So we have to develop this innate competitiveness by openly competing in the international market. So that is one message I would like to deliver and absolutely.
UNSCAP focuses on digital technology as a realistic approach for broad-basing the entrepreneurship base of the country. He places significant hope on trade-related entrepreneurship development, especially in the context where value chains have become all the more important.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody. I must take this opportunity, first of all, to thank the organizers opportunity to attend this event, and especially ISED and Mr. Matthew. Personally, I must congratulate you for this India Enterprise and Entrepreneurship in the States report of 2022. There are many, in a couple of minutes, about my thought on building entrepreneurship is also using the digital technology and digital tools for promoting business. And that is, which is very, very important. There have been reports, and a very recent report of UNCTAD, which looked into how e-commerce has transformed the way people do the business, and it found that while because of the COVID, the international trade and the local purchases declined, the trade through e-commerce continued to increase, and they projected that around $5 billion e-commerce trade will happen by 2024, which is a huge market potential. People in India also during the COVID, they changed their purchasing and buying habit. Of course, some of the retail chains and others benefited. Many of the micro or unorganized sector did not benefit because of these, because either the ICT connectivity was or is a challenge for them, or also having acquired the knowledge in terms of ICT skill to use these digital marketing and e-commerce tools. Government of India has also come out with the scheme of GEM, which many of the Indian industries are benefiting. There are reservation for the MSME sector. So these are these initiatives, but now also the Indian MSME need to look into these digital platforms to go global and become international. In this case, also, when we talk about formation of new supply chain, 80% of the e-commerce trade is business to business. So when a business to business e-commerce transaction happens and only 20% is between business to consumer, there is a very vast potential of establishing regional or a global supply chain. It requires definitely skill development, and I'm sure from our part, we have taken up work on strengthening women entrepreneurship, not only for India, but for South Asia. We have trained in last 1.5 years 2,000 women. We created 2,000 women network using digital platform to expand their business. There are many who have successfully procured order through these networks. They are using WhatsApp, they are using Facebook, they are using Instagram, and they are also using e-commerce platform for promoting their business, and we are helping them out. We have also developed in this regard a manual, which is a step-by-step guide as to how entrepreneur can start looking at the digital marketing, or what are the requirements, what are the security challenges, how you can successfully integrate with e-marketplaces, where and what is changing the global order, and many of the the countries have a very high trade cost, and these trade costs also comes through because there is no direct buyer-seller connection. They try to connect through middlemen and entrepreneurship traders, which control. But this e-commerce or a digital marketing provides opportunity to all these people to directly connect and therefore reduce the transaction cost as well as the trade cost. Of course, there are certain trade costs which are relating to cross-border infrastructure bottlenecks, but the other things which are relating to information, engaging consultations, preparing the documents for export and import, when you are doing through the e-commerce, it is slightly easy, and it's more going into the digital. So even when in government, when you are doing the international trading, the customs is now online, accepting online applications. So that would enhance and integrate people's business by reducing their transaction cost, reducing the time taken in making the voluminous documents required for international trade. I would just end up here and thank you all.
Max Bulakovsky supports the UNESCAP position by focusing on digitalization. He considers public policy itself as a crucial area for international comparison and mutual learning. Highlights of his presentation.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. And I just wanted to thank Dr. Matthew and also Dr. Ratna for giving these comments, and other speakers. Congratulations on the delivery of the report. And I just wanted very briefly, before I go into the short presentation about the OECD and our relevant work, just to highlight that the issues that you have mentioned today during the presentation are, of course, very important. First of all, digitalization. Just yesterday, I was at the presentation of the report of the colleagues from the Asian Development Bank, specifically focusing on the digital entrepreneurship. They have a focus of it. And one of the things that they mentioned, and I just want to build on this, that actually digitalization also created new opportunities for many businesses. It decreased costs for becoming a business, for creating your business, and for sharing information, and of course through e-commerce, through international trade. And also, when we say international trade, it's not only in selling but also into buying. Another element I wanted to build upon is just to make a comment to the element of Dr. Matthew mentioned, that also entrepreneurship plays a very big role in achieving the SDGs. Indeed, that's something that we have seen in the number of research projects of the OECD, and we have seen also that there is a rise of social entrepreneurship with a lot of young, and not only necessarily young, but also senior entrepreneurs focusing on specifically on what they can do to make a world a better place. And they're driven rather with social objectives or environmental objectives instead of purely profit-driven objectives. And those are the new trends that definitely transform the way the things are operated. Speaking about also the comparison of different systems and ecosystems around entrepreneurship, I thought that actually it might be very relevant to present the project we're currently doing in ASEAN, comparing the ecosystems supporting entrepreneurship and specifically SMEs. And the project is called ASEAN SME Policy Index. Basically, what is SME Policy Index? It's a methodology where we benchmark a variety of policies relating to small, medium enterprises creation, but also implementation instruments. It is a specific document which is designed for policymakers. And this tool identifies strengths and weaknesses in policy development, in its implementation and its monitoring across a variety of areas. So I will go a little bit further into it, but just to say that this is an approach that the OECD has launched in 2006. And so far we have applied it to 45 countries. Typically we compare regions because then we can compare one country to another. And so you can see that we have covered almost the entire world, and I hope we will be able to work in India on it in the future. We recently started a new project focusing on ASEAN, and it builds on the report we have done in 2018, comparing all 10 ASEAN member countries. Now, I'll be very short. So basically what we have developed some 600 indicators that report to this document, which allows us to measure the progress the countries are making across the areas and policies relating to SAPSMED achievement. So how does it work? So we have translated the 600 indicators into a number of dimensions, which are formed out of subdimensions, and subdimensions are formed out of the indicator. The indicators we have developed in 3 areas. On one side, they are focused on planning and design, so something that it's an intention to do. Second group forms implementation elements, and the third one focuses on how government can monitor and evaluate the implementation of this policy. So speaking about 600 indicators, but de facto, they are all divided into 6 areas. 8 areas. One of them is productivity, technology, and innovation. Second, it's about greening SMEs, access to finance, access to market and internationalization, the institutional framework, legislation, regulation, and tax. We also look at entrepreneurial education and skills, and social and inclusive.
Max's colleague at OECD, James Drummond, underscores the need and relevance of a sensible regulatory framework as vital for entrepreneurship and SME development.
Thank you very much, Max, and thank you very much for to Dr. Matthews and all the colleagues on the line today for also having me here today. So my name is James Drummond. I'm in a sister division to Max's. I'm getting some feedback on the line. If I ask you to, thank you very much. So I'm in a sister directorate to Max, where we focus on better regulatory policy making. And just like Max, I've noted several intersections between our work and what has already been mentioned about the incredibly great work being launched today by Dr. Matthew and his team here. First of all, of course, this movement towards digitalization and what we're calling agile governance is a very big and important movement right now across the OECD and really across the world, and really a focus on how we can use digital tools and better regulatory governance processes to reduce burdens and make better policies, also in support of the SDGs as well. And I'm really struck by some of the comments that have been made already today about inclusion for all, which requires a barrier-free approach. If you have barriers in place, it's really hard to include everybody, and a need to align many different institutions and different policy areas, which requires a coordinated approach. And it's exactly these sort of ideas that we explore in the sort of concept of better regulation. So I'm looking forward today. I have a few slides as well, and happy to take questions at the end as well. But before I get into the nuts and bolts of it, I just want to take one step back and just make the point that regulation is incredibly important to achieving the goals of building entrepreneurship and promoting SME development, because it's one of the 3 major tools that governments use to achieve their policy agenda, alongside both fiscal spending and taxation as well. And fundamentally, what regulation does is encourage people to start doing something or stop doing something. That's fundamentally what regulation is meant to do. On the start doing something side of things, there's a famous picture some of you might have seen from the Empire State Building being constructed, where you see workers very high up without safety gear on. If one falls, it's probably disaster. And regulation has encouraged people to start adopting things like safety gear to help promote safety at the workplace, which keeps people employed, keeps people in their jobs, keeps jobs moving forward, and it's better for everyone involved. But then we also stop doing something. And here is maybe an overly dramatic photo of pollution coming out of a smokestack. And of course, regulation has encouraged the reduction of those pollutants and helped make a cleaner planet, which will be really important going forward. And the point I'm bringing up this for is to note the human impact of regulation. Regulations fundamentally affect people. And if you make it difficult or hard for people to comply and read, first and foremost, read the regulation, understand the regulation, but then comply with the regulation, it just will not achieve its outcome of getting people to start or stop doing something. And this is where we have this framework called better regulation or good regulatory governance, where we look at the entire system of policymaking and look at ways in which reforms can be added to help make better policy. Here involves a strategic approach that involves actually making high-level commitments to better regulation, identifying reforms for all the various institutions that are involved in regulatory policymaking, using tools that generate and use evidence to make better policy, and then thinking about how all these elements come together. And when the system works well, it uses evidence-based policies or generates evidence-based policies that have the dual impact of protecting society and the environment, while also promoting the function of good markets, such as building entrepreneurs. And today, you'll see my presentation mostly focus on elements of the regulatory management tool space, but happy to comment on it more broadly. And just as a bit of a sort of a setting the baseline, where this information comes from is the OECD policy standards. We have passed 4 recommendations on better regulation, which is the soft law of the OECD. It's what members agree on should be the rules that we all abide by. And those are quite legal and quite high level, and they're implemented by the OECD best practice principles. You see 8 of them there that we have developed over the course of the last about decade or so. And these have been developed through our OECD committees and networks. The highest level is the OECD Regulatory Policy Committee, which is our governing body of all better regulation officials from across the OECD and partner countries. But then we have networks like the Network of Economic Regulators and the ASEAN OECD Good Regulatory Practices Network, where this is dived deeper into at sort of policy or regional level. And I'm highlighting ASEAN similarly, both because they are the neighbors to you guys, and there's lots of good work being done there. But the majority of the work is focused on SMEs and promoting a more SME-friendly environment. And you see that as a theme through all the publications I note on the right. So in the last few minutes of my presentation, I just want to bring up some of these sort of key lessons learned as some ideas for helping you as you seek to build entrepreneurship in SMEs. The first comes from a publication we wrote directly on the use of better regulation, also called Good Regulatory Practices for SMEs in Southeast Asia. And some of the key lessons that come out of that is first to recognize that there is not one singular type of entrepreneur or SME. There's many different types. Some want to stay local and just have a thriving business at the local level. Some want access to global value chains, and many in between. And that we need to be thinking about these different types of groups and different types of people as we're developing policies. And as well, remembering that compared to large corporations, SMEs can struggle with regulatory compliance. First of all, understanding very complex regulations, but also how they frequently change. Large corporations can employ teams of very highly educated lawyers that are dedicated to regulatory compliance. SMEs fundamentally cannot do that. And so understanding and adjusting is quite difficult to them. And overly burdensome regulatory requirements are a factor that limits the growth of SMEs from informal to formal businesses, which I'll pick up again in my next slide. And the fundamental conclusion is that we need a better regulation approach to SMEs that focuses on developing a fair, transparent, clear, and effective environment that is dedicated to these different needs of SMEs where we can. And picking up that transition from formality to informality, informality to formality, excuse me, that was written on in 2017 as well with business registration principles for the ASEAN region. And this was fundamentally written from the perspective of governments want to and should be encouraging businesses to become formalized. This both provides obviously a revenue base for governments because they enter the taxation system, but also provides a number of benefits. Governments can provide more strategic and targeted policies when they know these SMEs exist, as well as can provide them legal protections. They're no longer at risk of criminal penalties or liabilities. And it gives them access to things that help them grow, such as bank credit or government support that often need formality to be able to access. And the fundamental argument of that paper is that compared to, when firms want to make that decision to go from informal to formal, they fundamentally compare the cost of doing so. They compare the cost of the burden of registration with the ongoing compliance costs, taxes, licensing, labor laws, et cetera, and what benefits they'll receive out of it. And if that calculation is too costly, they're just not going to invest in becoming formal. And it creates, again, this sort of barrier to becoming. And that paper goes through a number of different pillars and ways forward that governments can use to make more business-friendly registration principles that is very fundamental to growing SMEs and entrepreneurship. And as my very last point, in my about 10 minutes or so that we have to discuss, I just wanted to note a tool that literally came out today. This was released today. So you see on the screen there the best practice principles on regulatory impact assessment. It's one of the 8 that I noted in an earlier slide. And what regulatory impact assessment, or RIA, is a way, before you design and create a policy, a way to think through the different options for regulating and find the one that has the highest benefits for the least cost. Because at the end of the day, that's what you want to be doing, is find the most beneficial policy that has the least burden for people. That was a general document, but we released today the annex. So we were developing multiple annexes to this. And one annex that was released today was an SME test, an actual test for taking SMEs and entrepreneurships into account when conducting a RIA. It's quite a long document, so I can't obviously present on the entire thing today, but I will note that it has the 4 stages for establishing, designing, implementing, and using the results of this test to be able to
Nourishing entrepreneurship at the ground level is vital for sustainable development. While business development services, in general, has a critical role, the primary initiative has to come from training. Center for Entrepreneurship Development, Gandhinagar, Gujarat, is pioneer in this area.
Training programs for entrepreneurs, budding entrepreneurs, first generation entrepreneurs, as well as second generation entrepreneurs also. Our arranging entrepreneurship development program of 2 durations. Like one is of 30 days and second is of 15 days. So these are basically into skill as well as entrepreneurship development. The CED is basically working under the aegis of Industries and Mines Department. So like 3D printing is also one of the very nice topic, like artificial intelligence, blockchain technology. So that kind of special topics, we are also arranging a sector specific program for this particular sector. Apart from that, we are helping MSME manpower also in sharpen their basic soft skills. Okay, we are organizing various soft skills. So we are also one of the implementing agency working for Gujarat industrial policy. So this is our mandate. We are working as a friend, philosopher, and guide for every entrepreneur. We are just coordinating with them and helping our entrepreneurs to connect with that particular department. So that is our PHS activity, post-training handholding support. Apart from this, we are also having a separate cell of...
From the beaten track perceptions on entrepreneurship development, the ISED initiative today remain unique. It tries to provide practical solutions to contemporary issues.